Mr. or Mrs. Listener. We accept the fact that you're going to sacrifice a whole hour to listen to this podcast, but we think you are crazy. In the simplest terms, you see us as you want to see us. A Ninja Turtle, a Jedi, a redhead, a Mike. Sincerely yours, Redhead Family Therapy Guy, and a Mike.
Don't you forget about the bugger. There's a walk on by. You better listen to this thing. It's gonna be great. All right, here we are, Family Therapy Guy and
a Mike.
It's good to be with you. I'm John.
I'm Michael.
And I kind of feel self-indulgent in the topic today because, our theme has been a little bit like some of these classic movies from our era of like when we were kids or whatever. And this one's recent, but so Merry Christmas, by the way. Merry Christmas.
Yay, Christmas coming.
And so we want to do a couple of Christmas stories. And though this one's probably not super well known and it's not like a classic like A Christmas Story or National Lampoon's or Elf or, any of those, it's just such a great movie.
It is.
And I wanted to talk about it. Like I wanted to talk about it. And so, I think our next one we're doing National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. And so hopefully we'll have to edit it. But that's what we're going to do the next one. So you're going to get 2 Christmas movies before the end of the year. But I had to talk about this one. It was just such a great movie.
Klaus on Netflix. It's a Netflix
original, right? Yeah, you can't. Sorry, I'm going to be coughing a little bit this episode.
It's one of those ones that came out 2 years ago?
Yeah, probably? I want to say 2 years ago. It's so funny too because it popped up and Emmanuel was like, "You got to watch this movie. You got to watch this movie." And I was kind of dragging my feet, and then I watched it, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And I made the whole family sit down and watch it because it was just so good.
It's interesting. I feel like you hear a lot of people talk about the other one, Christmas Chronicles, on Netflix. That's a Christmas Netflix only one, also. But I don't feel like I really hear people talk about Klaus as much. Maybe because it's animated, and so it comes across maybe as kiddish
or something like that.
But it's really good. I've seen it 2 times now, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
both times.
This is. I watched it a 3rd time, and I've watched it each Christmas, and it's just such a rich story. I think first off, the thing that hit me about this show is I love the animation.
Yeah,
it's just beautiful, and the way they use color through the movie is beautiful. It's one of the things I really enjoy about.
It looks good
about cartoons or animated movies or whatever is when they have a really unique look to it, and it's a beautiful movie. It's just a really pretty movie.
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job with it. It's not like Pixar, and it's just like its own
it's 2D
animation type thing. It looks really good though.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful show. And so that's what we're going to be jumping into. There's a lot of interesting themes to talk about with this one. We're not as honed into one particular theme.
There's just a bunch of stuff that jumps out.
Right. And with these Christmas movies, there's always a lot to kind of focus on or whatever.
Well, I feel like with this one, it hit me where when I think of Christmas Vacation is funny to me. I don't know that I get hit with emotion like I do or like I have throughout this one.
That's a good point.
Or even I think of Elf. Elf, I love, but I'm laughing most of the time. And there's 1 or 2 points maybe where I get some emotion. When I say emotion, I'm thinking it hits me in the heart. Yeah.
It always gets
Klaus does.
Elf always gets me
when they sing.
Yeah, when they sing.
Yeah.
I always get. I'm always looking the other way, whatever.
He believes.
He believes. Yeah, that whole thing that gets me, but the rest is just
But this one, I feel like it's scattered throughout. There's certain points, even maybe 20, 30 minutes in, there's a scene, and I can't remember exactly what happens, but I remember it hitting me. So earlier on, and then kind of scattered throughout.
Get you in the feels.
Yeah, and there's different things I take away from it. Even from this time to the last time I watched it, and even as we've talked, I think there's different things that you took than I took away from it. So
for sure. Is there anything about this movie that I guess in the traditional sense, some of the other movies, it'll remind you of Christmas traditions and stuff. I guess that in this movie, it's not quite that. I mean, this is one of the things it's a lot like a lot of the Christmas story movies or Christmas movies. It's it's an origin story.
Yes.
Right. It's it's a different take and a really creative one. I think the fact that it uses postmen, right?
Yeah.
how much are postmen involved in Christmas, right?
So for me, there is a sense of nostalgia to this movie because one of my first memories, like that I still have vivid in my mind now, is writing a letter to Santa Claus.
Oh.
And then if kids are watching, Santa sent me a letter back.
That's awesome.
And
because he's real. I mean, he's real.
He is.
Clearly.
He's up in the North Pole.
Well, and Klaus teaches you how he is real.
Yes. And so Santa sent me a letter back, and I had it for years. I don't know what happened to it, but I know I still had it when I got married. So I had it for a long time. And that's nostalgic to me. So this movie is nostalgic because it touches on like this whole letter idea.
Right.
Why do we write letters?
Like, how did that start?
Yeah. So it's really cool. And that for me is nostalgic, even though the movie, like Christmas Vacation, is nostalgic because I watched it as a kid. Like my family would watch it.
Right.
But this one,
and there's definitely echoes of family. Well, we'll save that for that episode. But yeah, I think I remember like in that sense, the nostalgia that was hit for me from this movie would be, I remember putting out cookies for that. Like when you started talking about letters, like it reminded me of like putting out cookies and milk. I think the other thing too is the scene at the end when things are starting to resolve and come together. When she's like, come down and see what you've done. And they're like ice skating and the clans. So in this movie, it's funny because if you haven't watched it, go watch it probably maybe before you listen to this. But there's these two clans that fight, and so there's this division in the town, and everybody is participating like as a community. And I think that's one of the things that I think of when I think about Christmas. Like I think about the local kind of Main Street area, like in where my grandparents live, putting up. Yeah. Christmas lights, and it feeling like that's something everybody was doing, was celebrating Christmas. And, people are a little bit nicer, or that just kind of idea, I think. And so that the fruition of that in the film, I think is something that really
kind of a community, right?
Yeah.
A community feeling that maybe just we don't get so much nowadays.
Right, or that's the thing I think I hope.
Community.
I think that's the thing I hope for or enjoy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? From enjoy about Christmas is that there's that like opportunity. Yeah. As we participate in things, like we have a lot of church stuff or whatever that we do. It feels communal. Yeah. So what do you for this movie? What is it that like just jumps out at you the most is kind of the main, like the key points of this story, or that you really that brings up like just even the love for Christmas besides the nostalgic letter writing and that?
So I mean, there's a few things. I think one thing that I notice is that there is pain in different forms. So Jasper has
almost
this
like
pain.
almost like everyone, right? The dad being disappointed with Jesper, Jesper being like thrown from his grace, right? He's like this privileged kid that's like flunking out of male school or whatever. He's like, oh, I can't be a mailman. I'll just go back
like
to
the
my
Emperor's
mansion.
New Groove,
of
the Christmas story.
And Klaus is in pain because he's this lone woodsman. And the town is in pain because there's this division, this, generations. That's like hilarious. The thing that's really hilarious and kind of ubiquitous about the conflict between the two clans is like there's no indicator of what it's about.
Well, it's like honoring my ancestry,
hatred,
not knowing why that hate is there.
Yeah,
but I'm doing it to honor them.
We are deeply loyal to the division and hate that has existed for generations amongst it's like the Crumbs and the
Hatchfields or whatever.
Yeah,
Hatchfields and McCoys.
Is that what it is? But yeah, so it's like they're honoring this like generational hatred, but there's no indication in the story, which I think is kind of fantastic, that they don't give you a reason why the hate's there, right? Because it's such a point to like there are these divisions or people will hate each other or there will be these rivalries, And it's like, well, what are they about?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to the point of like that everybody's a pain. And then the next major character that we didn't mention is the teacher, right? She's like, she was idealistic. She went to this place to teach, and she's just stuck.
Torn down.
She's just torn down. She's broken.
Yeah. Even the way they animate her, right?
Great.
She's disheveled. She's like completely worn out.
Cutting fish.
And the thing I love is that you have all this pain, and what heals the pain is service, and really it's
you just
love.
Jumped right in there, man. You didn't even hold back.
That's
you
like
just went right for it.
a big thing that jumps out to me is this service that is offered, and the funny thing is that some of the service being offered is just selfish.
It's completely selfish. Yeah. It's for completely self-indulgent
even
reasons.
Selfish service heals, which is really an interesting concept to me.
I think one of the things this movie does so brilliantly well is like it has all these juxtapositions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you've got the one, major one of, I'm gonna lose.
So
my
you
train of
have
thought.
Jasper being selfish, right? He's just doing what he's doing to get out,
right? Because his dad has said, like, okay, once a certain number of parcels goes through the mail system, then
6,000, I think. Right?
I think it was like
13.
I don't know,
something. It was a lot.
Some big number of like letters that has to be stamped by you or something like that. And so you've got that.
And so he's doing this selfish thing to get out, but in turn, he's actually doing a service to others. Like he's helping to heal.
Right, because it all starts because he gets this idea from taking this letter. There's a picture, and he delivers it.
It's a boy, right? This boy up in, so spoiler alert, okay, but there's this boy up in this home, and he's just lonely.
Well, he's like in a tower, and he's like a
Yeah.
prisoner in the tower, right? Which is such a great metaphor for because the real like victims in the story are the children, right? They're stuck in this town where there's hate and gray and just constant chaos and conflict. And so there's this picture of this kid, and he draws a picture, and he draws himself like he's locked away in a prison tower.
Yeah.
And it ends up in Klaus's hands.
Yeah, because Jasper goes to Klaus once he realizes there's still one more place on the map
that he could try to get mail to.
Yes.
It's like, didn't he say, because he makes it up. He's like, the boy wrote you a letter or something like that.
He goes there and he's like trying to escape because Klaus scares like the crap out of him.
Oh, right, because he's wandering around.
And like the spirit of Klaus's wife, right? I think
that's
the
what
gist
it
of
is.
the wind.
Yeah, the magic, which is really
brings
cool.
the letter to Klaus.
Yes.
And offers him which is such a beautiful thing. It's like the loving hand of a caring person reaching out and saying, this is what you need.
Yeah.
And Klaus sees it, and then this story really kind of blooms into, I'm going to give.
So he's got all these toys, right?
Yes.
He's got all these toys. And so it starts up that these children, are coerced or encouraged to write letters, and if they write letters, they get a toy. Yeah. And so it's like that's like the selfish. Like you write a letter, you get a toy, and like that's what Klaus kind of comes up with, Jasper organizes and creates so that there's this this mill so that that letters are being processed.
Yeah, so he can get his ticket out.
Right. So you've got this juxtaposition of he is doing the selfish thing, but it's bringing this town together. The other major one is like you've got these two clans that see that their traditions are being broken down over time because of the kindness that starts to bloom through the toys and the kindness in the kids, and so they decide to work together.
Yes,
they're
which is
sworn
really
enemies. It's just
cool.
hilarious. It's really funny, and so they're like sworn enemies, but they come together to get out Jasper
with the sole purpose of going back to being sworn enemies.
That's right. They're going to work together so they can be enemies.
Yes.
It's so fantastic. And then I think the voice acting for the female Crumb clan leader is
is it
Cusack?
Cusack? I thought it was her too. I meant to look and I forgot, but it sounded like Joan Cusack.
It's hilarious. So, and then the other one that's major for me, the other juxtaposition is like as Jasper this is coming to fruition. So then he's come up with this idea of Christmas because you can get lots of letters all at once, and he essentially invents Christmas. Mm-hmm. And he does this, and so they get on this warpath of like they're gonna make all these toys and everything. There's a lot that happens that we'll cover, but he's talking about how he wants to get back to his life of luxury, and lamenting. There's a voiceover lamenting of all the horrors of the town, but here he is like building this community with this interesting group of foreign-speaking people that become like the elves, and he's interacting with the teacher who's the love interest, and he's cuddling with her in front of a fire, and he's like, this is awful, and I need to get back home, right? Yep. So there's these constant contrasts through the movie that I think is one of the things that's just really ironic, right? And I think it highlights just that idea of, how I think you said it earlier when we were chatting, like the idea of the grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah. And I think that it's kind of this idea of sometimes we're so focused on maybe what we don't have that we fail to see all that we have in front of us. And while it's good to look to things that we want to accomplish or we want to better or we want to see change, I think that we also need to spend time just really looking at what we do have. Not only that, but what we've done, and giving ourselves credit or permission to really enjoy what we have, and not feel like we don't have enough, or we're not providing enough, or we're not doing enough. And I think that there's a lot of kind of just a lot of hidden messages there that can be interpreted from that.
So what do it's interesting that like the Joan Cusack character is so bent on maintaining the division.
Yes.
What do you think that's about? Like, do you think that's common? Do you see that with your clients, or like what is that? Why do people, because there is sometimes an investment in things staying stuck.
Well, yeah, I think that, so she's the female, so there's a female and a male mob head or whatever.
Clan.
Thanks. Clan head. She's the female one. And I think for her, this has become her purpose, right? It gives her meaning in life. And that I think because she's not happy, that meaning becomes everything.
Its purpose.
Safe to take hold of, or to keep hold of, and be the purpose.
And it's really interesting that people can get safe in their dysfunction.
Yeah. So it's kind of this idea where what I'm used to is safe because I know what to expect with it, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
But it's maybe not what is best for me. Right, it's maybe not as happy as I could be.
Dysfunction's ever what's best for me.
No, definitely, definitely. Yeah, probably not.
I don't know.
I'm trying to think of an example.
Maybe you
but
like
I'm
your
not
dysfunction. Actually, no,
I think
better.
I do sometimes. I think I do, but I don't. Right? But because it becomes safe, it becomes the norm.
Yeah, the familiar
of what we.
It's interesting that we would stay stuck because it's familiar and that change is unknown. It's interesting that the unknown becomes a more perceived pain than staying in dysfunction.
Well, and I think that's kind of like attachment theory, right? When we look at an attachment disorder, we desire a secure foundation. And so when we don't have that absence of that creates anxiety. It creates fear. It creates worry. And so what do? We grab hold of anything that seems to be a foundation.
So you're suggesting, and I don't know if I've thought about this, like you become attached to your dysfunction.
Yeah, because that's secure.
Yeah.
Because your dysfunction is steady for you, where trying something else is not secure. And that brings out more anxiety, more stress, even though it's the answer to probably more comfort in your life in the long run.
Right.
The short-term distress that is caused because it's not secure, it breeds a ton of fear in that moment and prevents you from moving forward.
And one of the things that's really important to understand, and a lot of people might not realize this, is that we really have, and this is really like the tension, I think, of life, or the developmental process for all of us is there's this one need for stability and predictability.
Yep.
We need to know there's food in the fridge. We need to know that we can sleep safely in our house and that we won't be, victimized or whatever. But then there's also this need for novelty and kind of the idea to wander into the chaos and then have to be forced by that experience to develop capability. And in that capability, we develop mastery and progression, right? And so you can go, but the thing that's interesting about the tension of these two things is you can be too ordered, and that feels like a prison, and you can have too much chaos, and you're just constantly in fight or flight, and there's no peace, right? And so it's really interesting that for a meaningful, purposeful life, we need to live in between the tension of the two, right? And it's like impossible. As I found it fairly impossible to have balance. It's a nice idea. It's something to work for, but really achieving like this perfect balance of like stability, but then challenging myself enough to have novelty.
Maybe balance isn't necessarily being right in the middle, but maybe it's an equal amount of one,
one to the other from time to time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Maybe that's more realistic for us.
Well, that's just going to be how it is, right? Like, I mean, my marriage, I would say, was probably pretty chaotic in a lot of ways as we're figuring out little kids. Like, and little kids are chaotic. But I would say, like, my marriage now, after 20 years, feels stable.
Yeah.
And then our stability is then, managing and collaborating on different aspects that's chaotic that's going on in our lives, right? But that's just a really important, interesting thing. And it was interesting as I was watching the movie, like, why are there these characters that are like, we have to stay to the tradition, even though, again, that's one of the juxtapositions. It's like, this is moronic and like dumb and everybody's miserable. But,
But when you're not in it, it's easy to see.
Right.
And that's another thing that I think we have to be understanding of people is that it's easy to be the armchair quarterback.
Right.
But when you're in it, it's real.
That's really hard to see.
And I'll give you an example. I always have in my mind, okay, I need like an emergency fund. So I save. John laughs because we've talked about this before.
I've got a really big emergency fund.
So I have this emergency. Heather and I have an emergency fund. We save up, but then soon as we hit the number, my mind's like, well, wait,
we need more.
That's probably not. That's just like the base amount. And so then my mind goes to, well, now we need this much money, and then my mind's like, well, wait. If we have an emergency fund, shouldn't we also have like an emergency fund, like if something happens in the house? So this emergency fund will be
emergency fund.
Yeah, this emergency fund will be if I lose my job. This emergency fund will be for the house. But wait, what about like a car?
I need an emergency car fund.
Yeah. And it's this idea of seeking, right? Seeking out and not being able to have the balance.
The felt sense of security.
Yes. To where...
And you're externalizing and trying to find some place.
Yeah, in those moments, to me, it's real. It's like, I need this. But then how much is that taking away from
the stress
me being
of that,
okay?
with just right.
Yeah, just to enjoy life. And not that I need to spend money, but just to not feel worried. Yeah,
that's the thing too. Like, and I think that's one of the things I try to really talk with clients when this comes up. It's like, one of the things I think that's important that might be about knowing yourself and having this felt sense of security, a part of it is knowing that you're competent enough to face whatever comes your way. So it's like, because you can never be prepared for everything.
Yeah.
You can't. You can't be prepared for you can't be emotionally, financially, intellectually prepared for anything. And I think the thing that gets you through that is the sense of, I'm smart enough. I have enough support networks. But it's interesting, right? Because now I'm hearing me say I'm enough. And like last time we were talking about shame, or a couple times ago we were talking about shame. With the Harry Potter one, it's always I'm not enough, right? So that's really the divider line.
So
right?
with Joan Cusack, I don't know her name. Joan Cusack, mob boss.
Clan boss.
I'm not going to remember the clan part.
Keep going. I'll find it again. I wrote it down.
So this purpose maybe, her purpose maybe gives her a sense of I can do this. I'm familiar with this, but doing something else is scary because maybe I'm not enough. maybe I'm not. I have this sense too, where I really get worried, like with work stuff, right? Or even like with the podcast.
You worry about work stuff?
Where yeah. Any of you know me.
I worry terribly about work all the time.
I'm trying to get more balance. John's my
on the other side of the
my
spectrum.
Miyagi. So there's this thing where we're doing this podcast, but then underneath, like, it's exciting to me, it's fun, but underneath this is this like peck, this kind of this poke of, can you actually do a podcast?
Well,
are you capable?
We've done 5. This is number 5.
We have, but
so
then,
we've done it.
But then and this is right. But this is the
Mission
point,
accomplished.
right? Is from an outside perspective, it's easy, right, to say, well, no, look, man, it makes sense. But in it, in that shame, it's hard to say, I hear you, John, but wait, man.
We haven't done it.
I feel like, and that's the same thing I think with her maybe, is she grabs hold of it so strong because it gives her purpose. It's what she knows, it's secure. And to do something else is maybe too much on the shame she feels. Maybe there's a lot of shame that's preventing her from feeling like she can. Just like for me, to think about, I'm constantly worried, am I doing enough in my work? But I think really what the shame is saying is, you are just getting by luck. You're not actually good enough to do the work. Like, I'm not a good therapist. This podcast is not really, that's that shame.
You only have 1 million listeners, not 10 million. So I'll be secure in my podcasting abilities when we have 100 million listeners.
Well, how many people have that rhetoric going on in the back of their mind that maybe doesn't come to the forefront? I think for me, oftentimes I'll get irritable or I'll get defensive. Right? We had a conversation yesterday where I got defensive.
Oh, yeah.
And I was
Me
like,
too.
I was like getting heated. And it was like,
You were? I thought you were pretty chill.
Well, I get direct, right? Where I'm like, what? But here's the thing is, in that moment, it's not even about the topic.
Right.
Underneath
That's
is
the thing.
What's going, am I thinking I'm bad or wrong?
You just hit a grand slam, because that's the thing that if any of us can have the wherewithal to cue into, because it almost never is what's happening in the moment, because what we're typically experiencing is trauma. And so when a trauma moment happens, legit, but we're usually in shock in that point.
Yeah.
In these other moments, we're like secondhand experiencing it. We're reliving it, but it's not like our argument was like,
but
nothing.
But it feels like the trauma. Happening.
Yes,
that's what gets the aggravation. That's what and I think that's what you see with the mob. Right? Is that's what's coming out is the trauma, even though
the history,
there's safety
and the
there.
Intensity of the trauma, and they don't even know what it is.
Yeah,
that it's not even identified
because it doesn't
anymore.
matter.
It doesn't.
It's
matter.
just what it means, what it symbolizes. Right?
Yeah.
It creates the trauma in the moment.
Ellen Boyles. No, there's no L. Ellen Boyce.
Ellen Boyce. Oh, there's no L in the Boyles.
Yeah, Ellen Boyce.
Ellen Boyce.
And Crumbs. The Crumbs and Ellen Boyce.
Yeah.
Ellen Boyce. So she's the clan leader.
Oh, that you were talking about their names. I just
yeah.
was making up some warring.
You just thought I was being creative.
Yeah.
So, so what do you think? So you've got this amazing conflict, this unnamed conflict, and what do you see as the key moments, and how does that maybe even relate to people's change in general, right? Like, this is a really interesting, beautiful aspect of this movie of how unnamed historical conflict can be broken down. And what do you see as, like, in the film or in general, like the things that break that down?
So I may not answer your question directly, but something that is so cool to me is that, Jesper has this, I think, this sense of, I'm just doing this to get out, right? But he really is doing good stuff. Like, his heart is changing, and he's wanting and desiring to serve, and it's evident by the end, right?
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes, how often do we maybe perceive ourselves as not trying, like not wanting to do good things and be kind and serve others, and just kind of perceive ourselves as selfish. And I wonder, how often do we take the time to maybe look at that and say, I am doing good things. And am I selfish? Well, sure. We're all selfish.
Well, it's that whole like philosophical, like if you want to feel joy, is that a selfish emotion, right? So you do service to feel joy, but you're really selfish because you want to feel joy, which is,
Well, and what is that? Why is it that we experience that? Why is it that we get stuck in things that, from an outside perspective are easy, right? There's all these things that go on, and I feel like Klaus touches on those things. I mean, maybe, we don't think that deeply when we watch it, but we feel things.
Yeah. And
I wonder, in movies in general, why do we feel emotion? And I think it's probably because it tugs.
Yeah, well, the fact that we outline all these different characters and each one of them are in pain, is, there's enough of a difference. Like, you've got infertility and loss with Klaus, you know what I mean? You've got this guy that wants kind of the comfort of just silk sheets and lattes, you know what I mean?
So maybe the idea is life is hard. There's always going to be pain. I mean, at the end, he is still like out in Siberia. Right.
Well, he chose it, right?
Yeah.
The cool thing too is like there's the moment where like his dad like comes to rescue him, essentially like, okay, you did it, so you get to come home. And of course his dad leaves him after he kind of tells him what he's done and he's like, I'm proud of you. And he talks about like that was one of the things for Jesper, is that he wanted that, of course, that classic approval of dad. You know what I mean? He's like, my dad hugged me and told me he was proud of me.
And to be honest, you can't tell me Jesper was really happier.
Oh, of course, right.
Right. And I think that's kind of the idea of the movie is, life is hard. Things are difficult. And so are we going to contribute to it being harder, or are we going to do things and maybe see ourselves in a way to where we can find at least pieces of comfort throughout that journey?
Yeah.
Because like we're saying, he's still up there. I mean, it's still not like the most ideal place to live, but he's finding pieces of comfort and joy.
Well, he finds connection, he finds community, he finds purpose, right? Like, that's the thing that like the media sell. Like we have this kind of American dream of untold wealth and ease and all the free time in the world. But like, if you really have just time and wealth, it's not purposeful, right? You mentioned this about the teacher, right? And like the arc that she goes through, where she's miserable and cutting fish, and she's trying to just save money to get out of there.
A whole jar full of money.
Yeah.
Right.
And then as the kids start to, want to improve their letter writing skills and start showing up at school, her love and she's reminded of why she became a teacher. And then, she ends up using all of her money. And it's like, again, it's this perfect, example of like your treasure, like the money's not the treasure.
Well, look at her affect, right? Her facial expressions, her emotions with the money and then without.
Excellent. Yeah, that's such a cool point.
And it's 180.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think maybe you could pose the question, what is the American dream? Is it what media portrays, right? Is it the material things, or is it finding those bits and pieces of joy and comfort
and meaning? And I think that's the real the moment that things change in the movie, right? It's the naughty list scene, I think.
Yeah.
Right? So the one kid's like, I wrote a letter and all I got was coal, and he's like kind of the bulliest bully of.
Yeah, and this is also, what did he do earlier? He did something to Jesper earlier where he
throw a dagger at him.
Yeah, he like
stabbed him.
He did something like
something violent,
and it was not nice.
Yeah, like threw a snowball or something with rocks in it or something.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah, it's like it's surprisingly like violent.
Yeah,
like that's the thing. It's like ridiculous.
Well, like they're all attacking each other.
Yeah, and there's the thing that's hilarious. Like one of the things that's so funny is there's these 3 or 4 like very like homely looking, strange, odd characters.
Yes,
and like every few scenes, they're carrying a bag that looks like a body somewhere, and they're like caught, and they're like.
Not only that, you have we were talking about the boy up in the turret or whatever
like
earlier,
locked away in the tower.
That's locked away. His like I don't think we ever see a mom. We see his dad. His dad looks like the Grim Reaper. Like
Oh, right.
just so depressing.
It's awful.
That's a side tangent. Okay.
No, right on. So it all kind of it like changes in this moment because he's all like, why didn't I get one? And he's like, well, you're not being, something about you're not being kind or nice. And he's like, well, he can't see what I'm doing. He's like, oh, he knows you.
Yeah. Is that when he goes into like creates a list and checks it twice?
Yeah, that song. He essentially says each line of that song, like he knows when you're awake, he knows when you're sleeping, And so then he's kind of scared. And then one of the other kids like jumps to, well, I guess I better be good.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the main ideas that comes out that Klaus says. He says that a true selfless act inspires another.
Yeah.
And that's really the crux of what's beautiful and how everything kind of changes in this movie.
Interesting to me because it was a selfish act that started it, right? Jesper selfishly creates this story that, hey, you need to be nice to people, me, or else you're going to get toys.
But interestingly enough, it's kind of true. Like you can't expect kindness and love from someone that you're constantly being rotten to all the time.
The question is, he was doing that, I think we perceive in watching the movie, he was doing that with selfish intent.
Oh, absolutely.
But the question is, is that bad? I think we perceive selfishness as wrong or bad, but maybe selfishness isn't always wrong or bad.
No, I mean, there are times where it's okay for you to want what you should want, right?
Right? I think it's a good question to ask is I think...
Is it a matter of balancing, right? Like it can't always be you.
But you should be okay to say...
I need this.
I want this.
Yeah. It's okay to want something.
It is, right?
Yeah.
But I think we have this culture, and maybe not, maybe it's just my own culture, but I feel like I see a lot
of like a martyr.
Where I am a martyr.
Well, I just meant that sorry. Oh, you are. Yeah. Glad you finally have figured that out, Michael.
I'm a slow learner. But I feel like there's a lot of times when I'm meeting with people, kind of this sense of maybe it's not okay to, and I talk a lot with people about, hey, there's selfishness and then there's self-service. What's the difference?
Well, there's the idea of, there's the characteristic trait that like Jordan Peterson talks about as one of the key characteristics of disagreeableness. Mm-hmm. And that's not always bad. Like, how are you ever going to, get your way? And you might need to get your way. There are things that are right, and sometimes you have to fight for those things that are right. Or, for instance, this town and the
So it's not about disagreeing, I think, right? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's good.
But I think it's about this idea of when someone disagrees with me, what is my story telling me?
About what that means.
Yeah. What is the meaning making that's coming from that? And if someone disagrees with me, am I making a meaning that, I must be bad.
I'm bad.
I must be wrong. I must be incapable, right?
Instead of
it's not about the please.
Yeah, instead of it's not about the disagreeableness, right? It's about, I think maybe that's where it ends up. Like, because the story could be, I'm bad, I'm being, rude and selfish, or, okay, that's a good point. Mm-hmm. Let's do that. You know what I mean? I was very articulate about that.
And it makes it hard for us to hear.
Yeah,
and that goes into marriage, of course, right?
Oh my goodness,
where it really plays.
There's so much of a push and
pull.
Well, yeah, and there's so much of a push and pull about like what I need or what do you need or
yes.
So yeah, I think that's a really emblematic and really the grand slam of the movie of this idea of the act of kindness, which over time it in this story it kind of breaks everything down.
So a selfish act creates something. There's a lot of pieces to this, right? But I feel like that's, and I don't know, maybe, there's always different perspectives, but for me, it's just so interesting to see this selfishness, I feel like spurs on and creates. If he didn't have a desire to serve himself, would any of this ever have happened?
Well, yeah, could. And it is the sad story of some life stories of people don't fight for what they want, and they end up miserable and broken in a gutter, right? And they never get up.
Yeah.
There is a sense of like you've got to fight for a sense for yourself, right? Because if you just end up broken and wandering, this is why there's tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands wandering around the streets of LA.
I may get a little a lot of flack for kind of these sentiments or these thoughts, but I'm not. It's a movie,
right?
Yeah. And so
we're not encouraging selfishness.
But my thought is maybe we just need to look at how are we internalizing things we're doing. And the way that we're internalizing those things, are we internalizing them as I'm bad, I'm not good enough? Or are we looking at them from a perspective of, hey, is this something I want to change or something that I feel like I'd like to work on? What is the meaning that we're making of these things? And then I think also, I think the question is good, to ask, is it okay to want things?
Or is it okay for it to be my way this time?
Yeah. And where is the balance in that, right? And that's going to be different for different people too, right? I mean,
right.
Well, because my balance with Heather is going to be different than my balance with you.
Well, and in this story, the thing that's interesting about this, so-called selfish act is that he surrenders that, right?
Yeah.
He surrenders returning home, to the empire for this humble life that continues to support Klaus, because he's really the catalyst for Klaus, right? Which is really the classic story of the son redeeming the father, right?
Yeah.
Because Jesper becomes the figure that's willing to give everything. Like he puts his life on the line, right? Like the warring factions of clans that are trying to restore conflict, come to destroy all the toys. They figure out what's going on and they find the source, and so they come to destroy all the toys. So they get Jesper, they think, out. And they're trying to, get rid of all the toys so the kids, will return to their malevolence and resentment and and hate. And so the toys, by and by are headed for a cliff.
Yeah.
And Jesper, is willing to sacrifice his life to save the toys, because the toys, the kids, the kids need joy, the kids need love, the kids need fun. And if the toys all get destroyed, they're not going to have any of that. But he's willing to give everything.
Yeah.
And he proves that he's willing to sacrifice. He turns away from his lavish lifestyle and returns to his people, his home that he's constructed with Klaus, right? So he's redeemed. And he's the catalyst because he's the one that comes into Klaus's life. And Klaus is a really fantastic figure, right?
Klaus is amazing to me because you have this story where really no one wants Jesper, right? He's trying, well, I don't know how much he's trying, but he's at this male academy type training place. And they're like, nope, you're not doing it.
He doesn't care.
His dad loves him, obviously, wants him to grow, but sends him off, right?
To the corners of the universe.
Yeah, he gets to this Siberia, or I guess North Pole place, and no one wants him there either.
Yeah, right.
Except this man who lives all by himself
up in the woods
and who appears to be in a lot of pain and not want to be bothered. And yet he still lets Jesper bother him.
He lets Jesper into his life.
It's really an interesting person. It almost reminds me of a Miyagi.
Yeah.
Right? Where he's kind of off on his own.
Well, he's one. Yeah, that's right. It's interesting, right? Because it's the notion of the teacher needs to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Right? That there's attachment or purpose in being the teacher. And he does. He teaches them a lot of things. Like one of the really, really touching scenes is where they're like out of toys. And I can't remember the conflict that happens, but Jesper is like trying to get him to make more toys and he rejects it. So Jesper's like, okay, well, and we don't know at this point, is Jesper trying to get toys made for the kids or he's still set on his selfish endeavor? And he tries to like make a toy and he like falls asleep and it's a mess or whatever.
Oh, yeah. So I think it starts as a selfish thing, but then there's like a scene or something that happens, and you get the sense of like he wants to create the toy because he cares.
Oh, it's because of the little foreign speaker kid.
Oh, that's right. He's trying to make it for her. The elves or whatever. They're not elves, but they're
that's the characters they become. Yeah. They fulfill that symbolically. Yeah. The girl, like he wants to make her a sled, like a wind sled, right? And he doesn't know how to do it, and he wants his help, and he won't do it. And so then he like tries and he fails, and then like Klaus comes in and starts to make it, and it's really endearing.
Even though it's somewhat painful for him, right?
Yeah. Because to make the toys is to be reminded that of the pain, because he made all the toys of the anticipation of having children. And so now he doesn't have children. He doesn't have his wife. She's passed away from being ill. And so he starts to make it, and Jesper starts to like speak up, and he's like, just make the toy. And it's like, it's like Klaus's goodness can't be denied. And that's a beautiful part of the movie, and also a part of the turning point, because that's so fun. They go and they deliver it, and they like wait all night, right?
Yeah.
They ring the bell, and then they come out. And that's the beautiful moment that they both change, right? Because they are enthralled, which we all love, right? Isn't that what we love about? I mean, like my wife is awful about spoiling the kids rotten on Christmas, because you remember how exciting it was on Christmas Day to have all these fun things. And so it's not about spoiling them, it's about enjoying seeing the pure excitement of the magic of Christmas and the excitement. And so them seeing that together is really one of the profoundly beautiful moments of the film, where they're just in elation of a child playing, that they made something that's bringing this child just pure excitement and joy, right? It's just it's really the heart.
Well, and therein comes like service heals,
right,
and it heals on many levels, but also I think even more so, it's the connection, the companionship of them doing it together.
Yeah, their friendship that comes in.
And
right?
so I think sometimes we may look at doing something for someone, and maybe it's not quite enough, but maybe we need that connection piece also.
Oh, absolutely.
Or if we could do something with someone,
it ignites that part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's an awesome scene, and then it empowers them to come in and
Klaus.
And
after that, Klaus is lit up. He's like, "All right, let's do this Christmas thing. Let's make these toys."
Well, and if you're not quite paying attention completely, he just has all these toys. He's not actually making any. This whole movie.
Point. To this point,
he just has them because he made them for the kids they couldn't
that
have.
They never had. And that's the other really deep dimension of this story is negotiating loss, right? Because Klaus has loss. They had infertility. His wife died. He's left alone in this house that he built for a family, and he's alone up in the woods making bird cage or bird nests because his wife liked the birds.
And he still has all the toys.
And he still has all the toys.
And he still sees his wife through the wind, right? Because it's hard to let go. It's hard to process grief and pain and trauma.
And isn't that how it feels like when we lose someone? It's like this voice that whispers and kind of guides us, which it does in all these key moments, like the magical wind like brings the letter. The magical wind like brings him to the door of the toy shop and finding Jesper asleep trying to make a sled. You know what I mean? And so it's this guiding voice of redemption and growth, right? And that's true too, right? Because, one of the key aspects of overcoming a trial or a trauma or conquering a dragon in our life, there is a voice. There is a divine voice in our head that will tell us the right answer. Yeah. But it's hard. Like, he's going to make toys. Like, how can he not make toys and think of his loss of making toys of the children that never came?
So what do you think of? Maybe the joy in the faces of the kids.
Yeah, I think that's when that's what happens. I think he's brought back to life because he's like, okay, I don't have my wife, we didn't have kids, but I, surrogately can engage in or have the I don't want to say satisfaction or purpose in doing what I wanted to do for my own children, I can do for all children.
It's interesting because really what you're doing is you're teaching your central nervous system that something that is scary and painful and maybe hard, that it doesn't always have to be that. Like he's associating doing these things with joy now, right? He's teaching his body, he's teaching his mind that, hey, I can experience joy. It doesn't always have to be pain.
Right. But how beautiful that this story of Santa Claus comes from a place of pain.
Yeah.
Right? That Santa Claus is the manifestation of overcoming the loss of family.
Through love.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
That's really kind of profoundly deep. All right. Any other key aspects or points that gosh, I just love the movie, and I think just I highly recommend A View. Because it hits on all of these different things that we're kind of haphazardly
and kids. I mean, kids and adults. Like my girls love it. They've watched it. I don't think they watched it with me this time because I was trying to like focus in without too many distractions. But kids and parents, I think both would love it. Or if you just are on your own, you'd love it too.
I think one of the other last points I'd like to hit on is just the idea of, it's interesting how the catalyst of change and these different characters came through really simple means, right? Like a letter, or like some of the things that the kids start to do so that they can for sure not be on the naughty list and be on the good list is like picking like the neighbor's berries or removing the daggers from the broken fence.
Well, I love how the parents someone picked berries and then they took it like out of spite.
Right. They went and like made a pie.
Hey, we picked your berries for you.
Well, I made a pie.
Yeah, I made a pie.
Here. Yeah, it all starts selfishly, right?
Yeah, and then it turns into
like this
change, right?
Well, it's because that's the point of the movie, right? The point of the movie is that a true selfless act inspires more, right?
Yeah.
When you do something kind and it creates that light of joy and peace and gooiness, it moves you to want to do something gooey and nice.
Well, and it's all about perspective, right? How do I want to view what's happening? And is there's not, maybe not always, but is there a way that I can view this, or a different way to view this that might bring me more joy? And is there anything wrong with that?
No, I don't think so, dude.
I don't think so either. I think that's what we're here for, is to find joy, to find meaning.
Have connection. Yeah, I think this is one of the common things that I make it as a part of my therapeutic practice where, I'm working with people to, people are coming in offering oftentimes because of suffering and difficulty. Mm-hmm. And, one of the ways to beat back suffering and difficulty is to give that suffering meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that. I don't think that suffering is just suffering's sake or the world is just a fallen, horrible place. It's an opportunity in this darkness to do something that matters. And in so doing is redemption, especially if in that doing you are able to connect.
Yeah.
And do a kind act that makes somebody's life better, which is why, again, this movie resonates on so many levels, because it perfectly mashes that all together.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I had any other thoughts. I'm
trying to think of different characters.
It stood out to me, just the few things that we spoke about. And in the end, you get this kind of this feeling of, wow. Like, I felt like, despite things maybe not being ideal, not what you want, maybe there's more of that present than what our minds let us see. And I think that that's something that I try to do with people when I meet with them, is try to help them maybe open up to, is there's not always, but oftentimes there's more there.
Yeah, attention's
to bring
huge.
Joy than and what prevents us, right? What blocks us from seeing that? Oftentimes our own story, or the way that our mind beats us up. Or
I think we were talking about that last time, right? We learned the wrong lesson from our trauma.
Yeah.
And so we're stuck in that, and we don't see the opportunities, or we don't see, or the blessings, that are right before our eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in some way we then keep ourselves in that safe place of trauma,
the crumbs,
right?
The crumbs and the crowd.
At least we think it's safe, but it's really it's
a gray, miserable. Yeah, we're just kind of acting out, reliving the trauma over and over.
And
over again.
Sometimes we don't know the difference until we experience some of that pain of change, and it's evident. It wasn't that they just started working together right away, these two clans, and they were like, wow, we actually it took quite a bit of the movie. They were still arguing. They're still having disagreements. It takes some pain to have that change happen. And I think that's what's really hard about each of our own individual traumas that we've experienced throughout our lives. And everyone has
especially
experienced
because you don't know the other person's.
Well, yeah, and I think that is what leads to why we get comfortable in our pain, is because we're familiar with it, and to be able to get out of that is going to take a little bit of pain.
Yeah.
But it leads to greater meaning, greater fulfillment, and I think greater happiness.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the mobs show us, is that, hey, there's more on the other side, but it's going to take a little bit of discomfort to get there. Maybe pain's not the right word, but discomfort.
It's a great metaphor because it is like a mob. Right. I mean,
yeah.
It's like
did I call him mob again? Clans.
Yeah, clans. But the idea of like a warring clan in your head, right? Like it feels like 1,000 voices of, resentment, and you can't do that, and what do you think you're doing, and it's wonderful representation of that conflict.
And I think that there's just a lot in this movie that you can point out, but that's whenever I feel a lot of emotion in a movie, I don't really think that much into things. I just kind of take things, when it comes to movies, they're just for me enjoyment.
Constantly.
I'm not really thinking. I mean, I do a lot of that, of course, in session, but a movie's a movie to me. But when I feel a lot of emotion, I like to kind of think, why is this
winning?
What's
why is
poking at me? What is it?
Yeah.
And I think for me, those things jumped out to me, questions that I think I struggle with, I oftentimes feel like if I do ask for something, that's not okay for me to want something or desire something, because, why do I deserve that? Why am I worth that? But, and I think that for me, and that's probably why the selfish act, jumps out to me as so interesting.
That's how I live most of my life.
I think I perceive myself that way, right? That's that shame, is that I am bad, so therefore I must be selfish.
I want this bike. I want this Jeep.
Well, I do want a lot of things. I try to be conscious of my spending, but I do buy a lot of stuff that I probably don't need. Well, I don't need. Well, wait, but I want it, right? So it's okay. But then I feel guilty about it. I feel shameful.
So one of the things that we didn't touch on that I see that I had a question about here is the role that adversity plays.
Oh, that was a good
growth,
one,
right? Because I mean, if you think of each character being in pain, and the role that the road that they had.
Jasper's perfect for this adversity.
Gosh,
Holy cow!
Yeah, like showing up in the town.
Yeah, and no one wants him there. No one cares. He doesn't even have like a base of operations that's functional. It's like chicken.
It's like a chicken.
What do you call that? Coop. Thank you. It's like you're at your house, basically.
I don't live in a chicken coop.
No, it's in his front yard. It's in his front. Well, it's in your yard.
That doesn't sound good.
It's in his yard. It's actually really nice. It is a big chicken coop.
Beautiful chicken.
And
with 14 magical chickens.
Is that it? I thought you guys had more.
No, I got 14.
14.
Yeah, we should get about a dozen eggs a day, or maybe 10, somewhere in there.
Yeah, they do get a lot of eggs.
My wife just she bought. Are they called Easter egg chickens, where they lay colored eggs?
Really?
And she just got her first blue one.
What kind of like any color, or are they mixed colors?
I think they are mixed. I don't know. We've only got one so far. Well, maybe it's been a couple since then, but yes, I think they're called Easter egg chickens. Maybe there's probably a more proper name, but yeah. Anyway, yeah. So we've got colored eggs.
That's cool. How long? Sorry, this is tangent.
You care. But this is it has to do with Christmas.
How long does it take for a chicken? I remember asking Nicola this once, but how long does it take until a chicken can actually lay an egg?
I'm going to answer this question, and then she's going to tell me why I'm wrong.
We'll have to interview her eventually.
I think I feel like I want to say it's 3 to 4 months.
So not too long.
Not super long time.
Yeah, I remember I asked her once, and I can't
remember. And it might
be
different for different chicken breeds. Different breeds have different properties. Like some are good layers, and some are good meat birds. And
that's crazy. Are any of yours good meat birds?
Yeah, the big ones. I can't remember the name.
But you guys
we have a mix. Yeah, we have
eggs, or will you
the meat ones also are good. Sitters or layers, so there's another characteristic. But
crazy.
I'm talking about things I shouldn't talk about. My wife is going to lose her mind when talking about chickens.
Sorry, Nicola.
She's like, how do you know that? So
my wife
is adversity. The chicken. If we have my wife on, we would call it the chicken whisperer.
We should do one of our interview podcast.
Should we interview our wives?
Yeah, that would be fun.
That would be kind of funny.
Oh, it might be dangerous for me. We'll see.
It would be completely safe for me.
So adversity. So
Jasper is a manifestation.
It's so crazy. So like huge adversity. So adversity is scary.
Loneliness,
adversity. We think of
the cold.
I think we also think sometimes if I'm experiencing a lot of adversity, am I doing something wrong? And the question I might have is adversity representative of being bad or wrong, or is adversity good? Is it? I mean, it's hard.
just kind of the way of things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is a little bit what we were talking on one of the other episodes. It's like you can't progress, you can't develop a capability, you can't feel a victory if you didn't have a crucible or what are the other words that are used for that?
So like, how much different does the joy feel of accomplishing something that was hard to accomplish?
Yeah. Well, if you don't have the hard task, then it's like it doesn't matter, right? It's like the thing that you
not as much,
it's like the,
right?
It's like
not
the
as
thing
meaningful.
that you like saved and scrimped for and saved for, and what that means to you versus like if your parents just bought you like something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
And so this idea of resilience, right? Resilience comes through allowing adversity to happen and to experience it and to not maybe taken out, because oftentimes there's outs.
Oh, we all do it.
Right. And so I think the question that I ask myself, not all the time, I should, but I'm shitting on myself. But the question I ask
stinky
myself,
when you do that.
Yeah, it is
Smelly.
So the question that I ask myself is, if I take the out, what am I robbing myself of? What am I losing in allowing the adversity to happen? I think of our bike trip. My knee was pretty bad.
Dude, you were
like
struggling,
it was really jacked up. And I really think it was just because I had my cleat position just off. And I think it just wore at my ligament in my knee. Yeah. And it was bad. Like it was to the point on the third day where I was pedaling with one leg. Like my left leg was just on the pedal. That's it. And I think I take that moment, that intense pain, and I jump to the next day when we finish. And how cool was it? Like it felt awesome.
Yeah,
like
dude.
it was bonding. It was cool. We were you see our picture. We're so tired, but we're so happy.
It was awesome.
And I think I could have robbed myself of the knowledge and the experience and the feeling, the knowledge that I can do it.
Right.
The experience
that you can finish a ride with one
doing
leg.
that, and then the really the feeling of joy.
Yeah.
And really companionship, connection. And I think that's, adversity is, I easily could have taken the out. Your son, both of your sons, awesome. They're awesome. They were our
SAG.
Thank you. Our SAG the whole time.
Yeah.
I could have easily just jumped in the Suburban.
Yeah.
And robbed myself of that. It was right there the whole time. Right?
It was etching. It was knocking on the door. Huh?
But was that worth what I would have lost?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's times where if my knee was really bad, I mean, I'm pretty good with pain and knowing if it's like a serious injury or not, or if it's just something muscular or something. But, there's times where, yes, you need to be safe. But in that instance, and I think in many instances of adversity, how often do we take the out and rob ourselves of the joy, the growth, the resilience that we could experience if we just maybe continue on? And the knowledge that I can do it. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a small guy, but I could do it.
Yeah, dude, you hung in there.
Right?
Dude.
I'm
was
not
impressed.
as fast as John, and John's a speedy Red Devil.
Red Devil.
That's probably not good. Aren't Red Devils
there.
a hockey team, right?
You're really
you're
not doing good.
John's a Red Flyer. So, I just think it's an interesting thing when you talk about adversity. There's so much to adversity, and I wonder how much do we lose sight of the joys and the benefits and the good things about adversity in maybe the culture that we see through.
Well, that we're
through
swimming
life.
in, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just like you just want the prize, right? Well,
Yeah.
and it's interesting too, right? Because if you deliver yourself, or if you quote unquote cheat, or if you don't pay the price, look at all of the insecurity and apprehension and depression and anxiousness there is. That exists to some degree or another because people haven't developed the fortitude and had the experiences of seeing a hard thing through. You know what I mean? One of the things that I really work to do, my oldest, he's going to be
Going to
20.
England.
Yeah, he's getting ready to go to Britain, and he's doing this thing for our church. And but he's going to be 20, and he's already run a marathon.
Yeah.
He's already biked 100 miles. And it's like, when things get hard, I can't tell you how many times things have gotten hard. And I'm like, hey, man, do you remember like mile 21?
Yep.
Do you remember when we were cycling and it was mile 85? And so, those become things to draw upon, that he'll be able to draw upon the work to train, the work to see it through, and the joy that he felt in the journey, the joy that he felt in the completion. And so,
it begs the question, are adversity gifts?
Yeah.
Right? Are they gifts to us to allow us to know our true potentials?
Well, and I guess that's what this movie really shows, right? Is like this adverse environment, this adverse challenge.
Was maybe a tender mercy of his
it was
dad.
Well, like you said, he chose it. Like he stayed there. Like he raised a family there and continued to be the postman.
And I mean, there are certain adversities that, yes, they're not gifts. They are horrendous things.
No, absolutely. That's
think
not the
there are
minimization
many-
of any trial.
Yeah.
But it can be a gift.
There are many adversities in our life that are gifts.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot of emotional maturity. It takes a lot of courage to reframe it and to see what I learned from it is worth what I went through it. Though I'm not saying that all tragedies and difficulties can feel that way, because they don't. When you're in the middle of that trauma, there's nothing that feels good or that's kind of like a sympathy response.
Mode, yeah.
And so I don't want to belittle any trial or tragedy and say, oh, well, just see the gift in it. You'll be okay.
Yeah.
It's not, I understand it. It's not that simple. It's not, we don't want to be that shallow, but I think it's just, that's the work of learning from, because what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do with your trial? You can live in your misery and turn to malevolence and resentment and hate.
Yeah.
Clearly that happens. Clearly we see that happening in the current cultural environment that we live in.
Jesper being sent to North Pole or Siberia or wherever is different than someone being
traumatized,
abused, or experiencing a trauma through seeing death or murder or whatever.
But to revisit the idea, what else is there to do with a tragedy than to try to come out on the other side of it wiser, more gracious, and allow it to be a teacher.
And I think that's the question, right? Is time plays a role in that, right? There's people process things differently, especially with trauma. But I think that begs the question of how much time and when are we maybe not the mob boss, the clan lady, right? The clan leader. When are we just in it because it's become the norm and it's scary to maybe get out?
Well, it's interesting too, right? Because you could say that with, what's in the movie, I don't know if there's much more of a traumatic loss than Klaus, them having infertility and then losing his wife, right? But in his preparation for his family, he became a toy maker, which is then becomes Santa Claus. Right?
Interestingly enough, trauma is in the eye of the beholder, right? So I think for Klaus, but was that more traumatic than Jesper being outcast?
Cut off?
Maybe not, right? Maybe from Jesper's perspective, that could have been his losing his family.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it was abandonment.
And that's the tough
He didn't
thing.
have the approval of his dad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the tough thing is trauma hits us all in different ways. And it's hard to say one trauma is worse than another when it's really the eye of the beholder. It's where you're at and how that affects you.
Yeah.
Side note, I guess. Awesome movie. It was good.
Great show.
Yes.
And you're going to get another Christmas episode.
Yeah.
And we've got some other things that we're working up.
We do. I'm excited.
I'm really
It'll be
excited. We
fun.
can't really comment on it because they could come out before this comes out. So
Well, that's true.
you might know
They probably will.
You might know the other thing we've done before we've done it.
That's crazy. Actually, they probably will.
They will, absolutely.
And now I want an Easter chicken. I don't know if I think I can have chickens.
Just check out, dude.
Yeah, I think we can have 2 chickens in our city ordinance or whatever.
Yeah. And you can get small little
I want
coops.
an Easter chicken. I want the colored
Ask
eggs.
Nicola.
I'm going to have to.
Yeah. You can have one tonight.
Is the chicken blue too?
No.
Oh, just the egg.
Yeah. I don't actually know what color it is. I can't remember. We have 14.
I want
so.
an Easter colored chicken too.
You want a tie-dyed chicken? I don't think you should tie-dye your chicken. I think that might be like animal abuse.
The SPCA will come after you. Or ASPCA. I
No.
can't remember what it is.
We know a lot of things.
I think, yeah, obviously. I think follow us on our Instas and our Facebooks and our
share.
YouTubes.
Help that algorithm.
We
get the word out.
We do some pretty awesome teaser trailers if you haven't checked them out yet on YouTube.
Dude.
If you think we're smart, take a listen or take a look at one of those teaser trailers. You will change your mind.
You should know I have no business listening to these gentlemen talk about life experience. I'm going to listen to that guy. Tell me how I do. Oh,
Watch our Harry Potter teaser. It'll
you haven't
blow
already.
your mind.
Mind blown. All right,
Thanks,
people.
all. It's been a blast.
Take care.
Adios.